I'm Eric Barnes with the Daily Memphian. Welcome to The Sidebar, a weekly show on the community, arts, culture, and more. Today we're talking to Lakeisha Edwards with the Urban Arts Commission, so stay with us for a conversation with Lakeisha. Lakeisha, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So we are out because of a minor, not so minor flooding event at the world headquarters of Daily Memphian. We are not in our studio downtown, but we are in Crosstown, actually, in the central atrium up on the 10th floor. And so people will hear things happening, music in the background. We're not in a cocktail lounge, which would be fun, but maybe we'll do that as we work through the disaster that was the flood event. But thank you so much for being here. Urban Arts Commission is what?
It is the organization that was established in 1997 to not only commission, but also manage the public art for City of Memphis. We also have some private projects where we go into a space and help private organizations and institutions, such as the airport, curate their space.
So the airport is one that if people have been in there, and if you have, I hate that not everyone can just go in there because it's so amazing. I mean, the art there and the building itself and the whole terminal is really cool. But other projects that maybe people have seen that they wouldn't necessarily have known. Your name, or Urban Arts Commission, is not on every project, right? I mean, it's maybe somewhere, but talk about some of the other projects.
So there's other projects like the I Am a Man installation in the MLK Park in front of Claiborne Temple. There's also installations at the Kennan Center. There's installations all throughout the city where you can see on our website, which is www.uacmem.org. And you can go to the interactive map and see what's in your neighborhood.
And so you started, congratulations, I should say. You started back in the fall?
I did, right? November.
Okay, so, and Lauren Kennedy was the longtime predecessor to you, who's has left Urban Arts to open a gallery, and actually Lauren is coming on next week, I believe, or the week after.
Good deal.
So we're looking forward to that. But the whole purpose of urban art, I mean, what is that purpose?
Well, the purpose is created in our mission, which is to create opportunities for artists and neighborhoods to connect and shape spaces through public art. So we want to basically use art as a conversation starter in neighborhoods.
It is really interesting. I mean, Memphis has, and I don't think all of it has come from urban arts, I should say. I'm going to keep saying it wrong. Urban arts, but a part of what urban arts has done is gotten other people to think about public spaces. I mean, when Loeb redid the Overton Square, for instance, that just became a huge part. And y'all may have or may not have worked with them, but they just realized we want murals, we want public art pieces, we want, as they said, we kind of got out of control with the amount of. But it is a huge thing if you walk around or drive around or ride around Memphis that you see. Whether it's Paint Memphis doing really cool, big murals on sometimes abandoned, blighted buildings. There's been this kind of minor explosion of public art in the city, it seems like. I've been here 25 years plus over the last 10, 15 years.
And that is actually rooted in what Urban Art Commission has done. With Lauren, she did an amazing job of expanding the scope of UAC. And even if we were not directly involved in the process, we helped to train those artists. We gave them opportunities that allowed them to move on to those other projects that may have been commissioned by other organizations. And I think that we do a really good job of planting that seed of what's possible in neighborhoods.
And y'all are not a part of city government. You're a separate 501c3?
We are. We are separate 501c3, and we have a contract with the city of Memphis.
Okay. The artists are, how many artists have you worked with? And you don't have to give me, don't worry about an exact number. But it's many art. In any given year, I know you're new, so we're I'm holding you to numbers you may not have memorized quite
yet. Don't do that.
Yeah, exactly.
But I do know that we have over 150 projects. So that's bare minimum 150 artists. And many of those projects have multiple artists that have worked on them.
Right. And throughout the city of Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
And not just people have seen I Am a Man, some of the ones we just talked about that are but talk about, North Memphis, South Memphis, East and West, the whole of it.
So throughout Memphis, we have installations and there's many more that are coming. One of which, just top of mind, is historic Orange Mound. We have signage that's going to be placed there. We have a project that is being done in Whitehaven that will be at the new YMCA. So we have lots of different projects that are on either city-funded property or city-owned property. And we also have a space with the Carpenter Art Garden that we have another project that's coming up. So we have lots of different projects that are throughout the city, and it either needs to be on city property or it needs to be privately funded where they bring us in to curate and commission. What we really want to do is ensure that we are the mediator that ensures that the artists are being paid properly, treated properly, and have access to everything they need to be great.
Yeah.
Right? We often hear the struggling artists, the starving artists, and we really want to ensure that these artists that are being commissioned for these works that will not only benefit their careers, but also benefit starting that conversation in neighborhoods to really create change and to decrease crime and to increase availability of people really enjoying art, because art should not be a luxury. That's something that you'll probably hear me say consistently across the board, that is something that I feel everyone should have access to, because until you truly have free reign access to art, you really don't understand the transformative properties of it.
Again, we're talking to Lakeisha Edwards, who is executive director of the Urban Arts Commission, started in November. It is interesting, that access and it's part of what I love about all the art that is public, that again, you walk by, drive by, ride your bike by. And there's a whole theory around, and I think Natalie Van Gundy and I went and saw a lecture on public spaces and the connection between people in public spaces. And the guy who did it was at Rhodes. It was a really interesting, I hadn't thought about this, is he used the example of opera houses. Opera used to be, many, many hundreds of years ago, very much for the people. It was not an elite art. It was the people's, and theaters were, you'd kind of be on the sidewalk, you'd walk right in and you'd
public
be
spaces.
in it. And then there became this grandeur. Mm-hmm. And there are beautiful, I'm not an opera guy, I'm not anti-opera, but I've seen the New York, the opera, whatever that is, Metropolitan Opera House, whatever that was, many, many decades ago. And it was beautiful in there, and the music was great and all that. But part of what this man described, whose name I've forgotten, was the idea that the opera house, and also happened with theater, and you can argue it happened in museums, they became bigger and elevated and big staircases, and they became removed from people. And it was whether it was class or it was race or it was men and women or whatever it was, there was a kind of systematic way that art was put away instead of being enjoyed. In the same way, theater, music, opera, and so on. Mm-hmm. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah.
That it's not would you say it's not a luxury?
It is not a luxury.
Yeah. Talk a little bit about your background. How did you come to this?
I am actually a social worker by trade and by most of my education and experience. So I started out with child support services here in Shelby County. I moved to Nashville and worked for a private agency with child support, came back as the operations manager of the Memphis office several years later, then transitioned to food banking. And from there, during COVID, if you ever want to meet someone who's super disrespectful and hard to work with, get somebody who's embarrassed. And that's what we saw. We saw a lot of people who are embarrassed to be in those lines. They were really struggling with the fact that we were all on lockdown and all the emotional issues that people were going through. And it was a hard time for me, even, because I had lost my father in 2019. So I was grieving. I'm, serving the front line. I was director of agency partnerships and programs for Mid-South Food Bank. And it was very overwhelming. So I decided during that period of time that I really wanted to transition my career so that I could continue to do community work, but not meet people at their lowest point of life. And that's when I was recruited to go to Fayetteville, Arkansas. So I ran a nonprofit art gallery, executive director of Art Ventures. And that was a nonprofit art gallery that serviced local artists and really focused on giving them the opportunities that we felt like they weren't really being given in that space, underrepresented artists. So we really focused on artist representation, art education, and community collaborations. So that's at the foundation of my art background. And then I was looking to stay within the arts, but I didn't know that it would bring me back to Memphis. I'm a Memphian by choice. I chose to come back, but I really didn't think I would land here. I was interviewing literally all all over the country. And when I saw this opportunity, especially with an organization that had a leader that had poured so much into it, I just felt it was the perfect foundation to build upon.
So, and Lauren was there almost a decade.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Like 8 or 9 years.
Yeah. And Lauren Kennedy, the former, for those who joined us late, the former executive director. You're coming in, and everybody who comes into a job like this, there's change,
yes.
right? What kind of initiatives or change or new things or different things are you looking at?
One thing that I really want to focus on is creative placemaking. I'm on the global cohort for the Northwest Arkansas Urban Land Institute, and that's something that really set the stage for my thought process in regards to creative placemaking. I think there's a lot of opportunity to use art to create some sustainability as well as some functionality within communities.
You mentioned that before, sustainability, in what sense?
So sometimes when people look at art, they say, oh, this is something nice. We can look at it. It's temporary. We'll take it down eventually, rather than looking at something that could be a long-term solution to a problem. And that's the kind of change that I want people to really see when they look at art.
We're going to come back to a bunch of that, but I'm going to take a minute here to do some housekeeping. If you joined us late, this is The Sidebar. I'm Eric Barnes. The Sidebar airs on WYXR 91.7 every Thursday at 11:30. We're here with Lakeisha Edwards from the Urban Arts Commission today. And we are recording in Crosstown, not in the YXR studio, but up on the 10th floor because we had a flood at the headquarters of the Daily Memphian, including the podcast studio. So this is actually kind of fun. Other than there's a guy with a maintenance. We're watching this guy with a big, huge toolbox, and I'm like, at some point, a drill will be coming out. There will be some sort of power tool. I don't know what we'll do. We'll take a little break. Something's going to happen. I'll talk really fast. I mean, something's going to happen, but it's all fine and it's all good, and it's actually really fun to do this up here. The Sidebar, again, besides being a show on WYXR, it's also one of the many weekly podcasts we do at the Daily Memphian, including the Grizzlies podcast, the Memphis Tigers podcast, and our food podcast, Soundbites, with Chris Harrington and Holly Whitfield, who will be recording, I think, here in public in the coming weeks. I think this is our plan for at least the YXR shows. So you can get Soundbites on WYXR every Thursday at 11, right before the Sidebar. But all of our podcasts are on the Daily Memphian site, as well as iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can also get the WYXR shows at WYXR.org or download the WYXR app. And that includes these shows and all the WYXR talk shows and the archives of the music shows. If you can, become a supporter of WYXR. It's nonprofit, listener-supported radio. You can become a member. You can do a one-off donation. And also, if you're not already a paid subscriber to the Daily Memphian, please become one. That is how we support what we do for our nonprofit newsroom. As I mentioned, coming up soon, we've got Lauren Kennedy, the former head of Urban Arts Commission, coming on, talking about her new gallery that she just opened. We've also, speaking of placemaking and all that, we've got Rory Thomas from Memphis Medical District Collaborative. He's coming on. We have more men with toolboxes coming towards us. So, we're just going to see what happens, what kind of construction site we've landed in. If you missed it recently, since the start of the year, we had Serena Wages, a musician on and songwriter. We were talking about her album preview party. They're moving. They're continuing. The sound of the wheels of the tool. So we're safe on this one too. We've got ASMR, right. This thing is a real-time live sort of live to tape. But yes, live radio to tape. But Serena Wages, singer-songwriter, was on talking about her new album, talking about touring, and talking about her album preview, which is at the Listening Lab here in Crosstown on February 1st at 6:30. We also had Tim Barker, who is the founder, chef of Edge Alley, which he recently chose to close, speaking of Medical District. And it was a really interesting conversation about, if you're at all into restaurants, bars, coffee shops, any of that, the real sort of art and science and business and difficulties and kind of joys of doing that sort of thing. So that was recently as well. We also do Behind the Headlines with WKNO. We do as a TV show every Friday at 7 o'clock. You can get it online. We have U.S. Attorney Kevin Ritz coming up. Also have Paul Young, Steve Mulroy coming up in the future weeks. And we recently had Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris on, as well as, and again, there's a theme here apparently, of placemaking, the Northside High School redevelopment. We had Rashawn Austin and Archie Willis on talking about that huge project that is amazing, an amazing neighborhood project, amazing kind of business project, and so on. So last bit of housekeeping, then we'll get back to Lakeisha. Our Women in Business seminar is coming up February 28th at 3:30 at the Botanic Garden. Go to Eventbrite, search for Daily Memphian. You do need to buy tickets to be there. Carol Coletto will be on the panel. Pat Mitchell-Worley from Soulsville Stacks and Chloe Sexton of Bluff Cakes will all be there. Again, that's February 28th at 3:30. Go to Eventbrite and search for the Daily Memphian. But back to Lakeisha, that whole thing, and it was ironic. I mean, the redevelopment of Memphis Medical District, which has tons of urban art. That was a big part of it. Have art, make the streets walkable and accessible. North Side is very much that. If you not only do you fill that space with people who live, work, play in North Side, but it has radiant effects in the neighborhood. I mean, that has been the goal with Crosstown. And so that notion of, I think earlier you also talked about, crime's on everyone's mind. I mean, it is. You talked about crime as well and that connection between art and neighborhoods and place. Tie all that together if you can.
I think as we go into neighborhoods and we increase the engagement, that is what helps with not only bringing something that beautifies that neighborhood, but also, again, starts that conversation with the art that we're putting in that space, saying, what do you want to see? To ensure that people are seeing things that inspire them and that they know will inspire the additional community members that will see it every day.
Again, that's back to that, it not being a luxury, right? I mean, you think of the kinds of art people can do. Some of it gets very expensive, right?
Does.
And so, and artists, it's great to hear that you make sure they get paid, but they also, the metal, the wood, the paint, everything that goes into it is incredibly expensive. Is that part of what you're trying to fund as well, is try to make all that work so that the artist still walks away with a wage, not just covering their expenses? Or
yes.
No?
So we use the funding that we receive from the city to fund the commissioning of those projects. So we use that to commission the project, but we also look at our community partners to see what type of in-kind donations we can receive, and also requesting donations for programming, because that's another part of it. You don't want to just install something and just leave it there. You want to draw people to it so that they can learn from it.
Is it all Memphis artists or not? Not necessarily.
Not necessarily, but we're running about an 80 to 85% rate of local artists.
Yeah. I mean, I assume with some amount of city funding, there's some pressure there, and then local funders and so on. But the other thing in terms of, this is more of a Paint Memphis thing, I think. I don't know how much murals you all have done. I mean, you've done some.
Many.
They're amazing. Just the simple mural and the change that makes. Talk about that. I don't even know what my question is. I just think it's so striking when you go. One of the only other cities, I travel a fair amount, and one of the only cities I've ever gone to that has a similar amount of murals all through its downtown is Oakland. My son lives in Oakland. And it's just cool. I mean, you just feel better about, there are great spots of downtown and Midtown and North and South Memphis, and there are parts that are kind of blighted. And sometimes those murals sort of shed a new light on a whole neighborhood, a whole street, a whole building.
It not only sheds light, but it is a social economic driver. It brings other people into that space that may not generally come into that space on their own. It brings new business. It allows people to increase their property value because people feel safe when they see art. There's a lot of different things that art brings into a community that is not necessarily appreciated as much as it should, but there's statistics and it's known facts that it is a social economic driver.
Yeah. For people listening who say, well, I want art in my neighborhood, or I'm involved with, what do people do?
They should reach out to me. They should email me at lakeisha@uacmem.org. Go to our website, sign up for our newsletter, look for the upcoming calls, because we may have a call for Neighborhood Art Initiative where we actually ask neighborhoods to tell us where they want to see the next installation of art. There's also calls to specific artists to say, we know the neighborhood, now we need someone to create.
And I don't want to make too much of this, but any sort of art, any kind of political, there's people who don't like that. They don't like that painting. They don't like that sculpture. How do you navigate that? It sounds like you do a lot up front.
Yes. So that's what the selection committees are for. So again, if anyone has any interest in being on a selection committee, they should reach out to us as well. Because when we have a selection committee, before we even start, before we select the artist, we are wanting to say, what is needed in this neighborhood, what's going to be important, and who do we need to bring to the table. So we'll bring someone from the city, of course. We'll have someone from the community. We'll have other artists. We'll have people like me who are who appreciate art, but not necessarily on that level of creativity. And making sure that we have multiple voices at the table. So up front, we have an unbiased view.
And that works in the sense, I mean, there's always somebody who's like, well, I still don't like it.
Of course.
I mean, but that will be the process. Other things, I know what I was going to say, is other things that you're looking at doing more of differently, again, as you go into your only a couple months in the job, and it doesn't sound like you think the place does not need to be remade.
No,
again,
not at all.
Some of those other initiatives you'd like to see more.
I would really like for us to do a better job of fundraising for the programming that's needed to really hone in on those untrained artists. Memphis has a lot of talent that needs to be polished. And we want to be an organization that provides the opportunity and the training so that they can be competitive. Because just having the talent isn't always what's going to get you the deal, right? You have to know how to navigate the system, such as Submittable, just to be able to showcase your artwork, or knowing how to navigate what a particular space may need in regards to even technical things. How is this set up? How is this going to be viewed? What are people looking for in particular environments? So we really want to have those conversations with some of these artists that may not have the educational background, or they may not have the experience, but they have the raw talent. And I really want to be able to provide the programming needed to train them.
It is interesting. And I remember I was looking at you. We hadn't met before today, and I don't think we certainly had never talked like this before today. And looking at your bio, I was on LinkedIn or wherever I was, and the social work. And you talked about the top of this, that your start was in social work, and it was kind of like, whoa, what a weird jump. But as you talk, it all comes full circle,
it does.
Right? And that was part of the appeal of all this. Right?
Yes, because my entire career has been dedicated to increasing and improving the quality of life of others. And art does that on so many levels. It was actually something that I didn't even know I needed during my time of grieving. So I feel like when I went to Arkansas, I saw something that was so beautiful, and I saw it being replicated in different variations in other places. And I didn't know exactly what the next transition would be, but I knew that I wanted to be supportive of local artists, because I saw that that was a really unique situation where people have all this talent and they're right here at home, but they're being overlooked because, either someone has access to something they think is bigger and better, or because they just don't know about the opportunities.
Yeah. And at a time when, again, we talk, I don't want to dwell on crime, but I mean, when people are feeling frustrated and nervous and whatever they're feeling, and feeling maybe down on Memphis, not everyone, but some are. These are things we got, again, 80% of what you're doing is Memphis artists. Yes. These are things that you do just drive around and go, well, the city is really cool.
Yes.
You sit in Crosstown, like the city's very cool. There's just like really great things happening that need to be, I don't know,
highlighted. And there are a lot of people that are sitting around tables on a consistent basis looking for ways to improve quality of life for Memphians. And I think that people should know that. Yeah.
If you're stuck in it, I ask people this question sometimes. So, I know, before I do that one, do you paint? Do you draw? Do you sing? Do you have any artistic? No, it's fine to say no. I mean,
I sing in the shower, and I like to do the adult coloring books.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think it's definitely not.
And I'm pretty, I know I'm pretty eccentric when it comes to like nails.
You're showing me your
like
green and multicolored, green themed nails and the Daphne dress.
Yes.
Yeah. So
my Scooby-Doo Daphne dress on today.
As we kind of begin to wrap things up, if you're stuck in an elevator, how would you describe your job to somebody?
If I was stuck in an elevator, I would say I support local artists by giving them opportunities to create spaces and start conversations in their own communities.
Yeah. Okay. And your first concert? I always ask people this.
First concert, it was Mary J. Blige.
Okay.
At the FedEx Forum. They had just built it.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a first. That's a first. We've got some good ones lately.
I sang every song with all my heart.
Again, people can search for Urban Arts Commission. Is it Arts Commission or Art
It's
Commission?
Urban Art Commission.
Why don't I get the S in there? Why
don't
can't I
know.
do this right, Natalie? Fix this. Take it all out and fix it. And again, if you join us late, we're here on the 10th floor of Crosstown because we were flooded out of our lovely office downtown, including our world headquarters podcast studio. So we're doing the show somewhat live here with Lakeisha Edwards from Urban Art Commission. Thanks so much for being here. Congratulations on the new job. We mentioned Lauren Kennedy. She's coming up on a show soon to talk about her new gallery that she opened.
Yay.
We've also got Rory Thomas from Memphis Medical District coming up in a couple weeks. And Serena Wages, singer-songwriter from Memphis, was on the show, I think last week. And she's got an album preview coming up on February 1st at 6:30. Matt Ross Spang will be there. She and Joe, who's the producer and of that album, and Serena and Joe Stevo, guitar player, musician, I think he plays a lot of instruments actually, we'll be doing a couple of songs from the show, and they somehow invited me to moderate a panel, so that will be super fun for me and hopefully okay for them. That is all the time we have this week, though. If you missed any of the show, go to wyxr.com or WYXR, the WYXR app. The show airs every Thursday at 11:30 on WYXR 91.7. It's also a podcast that you can get on the Daily Memphian or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks very much, and we'll see you next week.